Question. The poem A Soldier's Wife Weep reveals the impacts of war. Discuss. The answer follows. The poem A Soldier's Wife Weep, written by the Sri Lankan author Kamala Wijerathne, reveals the impacts of long-lasting war in the country. In the poem, writer shows how the wife is affected due to the sudden death of her soldier husband. Let's analyze the theme in detail in the following paragraphs. In the ancient period, the war was admired by all people because the war was needed for safety and serve the land. But during the period of this poem and later, people understood and realized the reality of war and its impact. According to the writer, the realization of the war is a great tragedy. For example, the tears of soldier's wife disclose the loss as an impact of war. She lost her beloved husband, happiness, hope, and her future. There's a line in the poem, I think of bare, barren year. It shows her future is nothing after the loss of her husband. Her entire life will be dull and dry. Death is a deep impact of war. According to the politics and patriotism, a soldier's death may be considered as glory or praisable. But it brings deeper harm to the ordinary people who depend on the soldier, especially his family members. The poem says, they gave heroes burial to the soldier. It reveals the attitude among the leaders and political people about the soldier's death. In the funeral speech, they gave medals and praising utterance of the success of soldier, but they failed to think the pain of the soldier's family members. It's a dark phase of the war. The other main theme of the poem is separation and loneliness. Usually in a family, a husband is expected to be united with his family because he is the strength of the family. He must spend his time and joy with his wife and children. However, the war separates them. It limits the bond of husband and wife. The wife says in the poem, I watched until you disappear over the bend. It reveals the bitter feeling of separation. Also, on Thursday, when they bore her husband at home, she started her loneliness of remaining life. In addition, the writer highlights the grief of the woman, the soldier's wife, who was suffering after her husband's death. Because of the grief and suffering, she could not believe or realize the things which were happening around her. A line says in the poem, I did know what to believe, what to think. It's clear she couldn't understand the situation and what was happening in front of her eyes. So, through this poem, the grief and suffering are described as impacts of war. The impacts of war caused to destroy the joyful life of the soldier's wife and filled her with lamentation. She had been enjoyed her life with her beloved husband in past. Now she has so many sweet memories of her husband, but those will not give happiness or comfort. Those memories made her to cry. The following line shows that clearly. On weekend, when I have nothing to do, I spread the white wedding sari on floor. Yes, after this action, she recalls her memory and starts to cry. Through the above discussion of the poem, it is obvious and acceptable that the war and its impact make a deeper harm on humans' life. It crushes the happiness, hope, love, life, and future. Also, the war create uncurable wounds in hearts of innocent and victims. Thank you.
Question number 1. Kamala Wijerathne, in her poem, A Soldier's Wife Weep, lamentation on the death of her husband. Explain, taking examples from the poem. The poem A Soldier's Wife Weep, written by the Sri Lankan author Kamala Wijerathne, reveals the impacts of long-lasted war in the country. In this poem, the writer shows how an innocent wife is affected due to the sudden death of her soldier husband. Let's analyze them in detail in the following paragraph. According to the poem, the poet conveys many themes in her poem, like suffering, loss, love, lamentation of wife, hero's burial, attitude towards the dead, dependently of wife on a husband, thinking about the future, beliefs in horoscope, traditional beliefs of singleness. The following article is going to analyze each and every themes briefly. The poet has chosen the exact title for her poem. The title, A Soldier's Wife Weeps, directly conveys the theme of suffering. The poet reveals the shade of the soldier's wife. On the other hand, the poet emphasizes the feelings of wife when her soldier was dead. Then the poem shows love between husband and wife. The very first verse describes the emotional moment when the soldier departed from his wife. After his leave was over, she could not bear her husband's departure. After the death of her husband, she recalls how she enjoyed with him when he had come home for the last time. That was their cheerful and happy moment. The poem indicates hero's burial of the soldier. When a soldier died, he received a guard of honor like that he got military honor and band play. The following line shows that they gave you a hero's burial with all military honors. This implies the reality of Shaulier's death, even being the wife of an Shaulier husband, cannot have rights over his last life. They consider that the Shaulier's body to belong to the nation. His bereaved wife will be left alone with no attention of anybody. The poem highlights the lamentation of wife. The following lines express her situation. But on Thursday, when they brought you home, I did not know what to believe, what to think. The poet shows wife's pensive mood, darkening her whole future. When Shaulyer received the honor, the wife was in an agitated state of mind. She was not fully conscious of her husband's sudden death was a hard stroke to her. She looks into the future with uncertainty. She's not sure how her future will pass without the care and attention of her husband. It shows how the wife depends on her husband. Furthermore, the poet presents the believeness horoscope. Even she showed bad moments, she believed in horoscope. She had a solace and could satisfy herself. She was fully confident that her husband was safe. The poet ends the poem with the saying how wrong the horoscope readers were. Similarly, Sinhalese have their own traditional beliefs, customs, religion, and omens. The poet starts the poem with a religious ritual. The wife prays to the Buddha after her husband left for the battlefield. Pray to Buddha for the safety of the life of her husband. That's the custom of Sinhalese folk as a part of their culture. In keeping with the theme so far elucidated, it is clear that Kamala Wijerathne, in her poem, A Soldier Wife Weeps, talk about Sinhalese traditional beliefs rather than bereavement. The end. Thank you.